NIO event in Berlin done. I'm back, and you asked lots of questions around my take with the NIO subscription business, so this is my video about it. I've been thinking around it. I've been talking to both users after the event as well as people from NIO, of course, so I gathered some background information. Will give you also a little bit of my personal context around it. And so, yeah, I basically prepared a couple of notes here, and I'm gonna walk through them. I'm not sure if they're entirely in order, so this might be a longer video, but yeah, please stay around if you're interested in this topic. And so let's start. So first of all, I think a move from ownership to mobility services is something that the industry is talking since quite a long. As you know, my background is that I also do consulting. So we've been, well, first I was employed and been a consultant for various digital business models for some of the German OEMs. I've been working with Mercedes-Benz Technologies in Shanghai in the office, and also saw it from, let's say, more a regulatory standpoint of view in the German Chamber of Commerce in Beijing. So these kind of insights that I have, I just want to pass them along. And so during my career, I was fortunate enough to work with Audi, for example, at some of their mobility services like Audi On Demand, Audi Select. So these are some of those mobility services that basically enable you to have sort of a subscription model for your car, or at least a short to long term as well as medium leasing, and lots of flexibility. And this was also the pitch that we got from NIO during the NIO event, right? So the mantra was flexibility is the new premium. And I just want to point out that, you know, that was 10 years ago for almost, that Audi was working on such products. By the way, it's not only Audi, it's also Porsche, it's also Volvo. They have been working on some certain offerings like this in the past, and some of them not so successful. So I'm not entirely sure about the latest state of those Audi offerings, but I know that, for example, Audi Select was not continued any longer, and also with the Audi On Demand, I think there were ups and downs. So yeah, consumer adoption, is there anything like that for such kind of subscription services? It's kind of up in the unknown. And on the other hand, what NIO is doing there is not entirely pioneering here, right? So they don't have this idea as the first company. It's rather, I would say, yeah, really around what they see currently as trends in the market, and also how they understand themselves. And that's why I'm where I need to point a little bit deeper now into where is NIO currently standing, what's their position. And so, you know, NIO started, of course, in China and are currently facing the issue that are ramping up many factories and models, and yeah, really kind of struggling with pumping out supply, right? And on the other hand, now making already big moves in going overseas. Now, the first market, of course, was Norway, where they just offered just normal to really buy the car just as it is. Now, you need to know that Norway is, of course, an exception. So Europe is an entirely different market, the EU more specifically, I should say, because that's another legal framework. So in Norway, you don't pay any import taxes, something that I will come back to later. And so that's an entirely different market to the European market, I should say the EU market again, where a company like NIO, they need to really take those taxes when importing cars into consideration. So also for the pricing of the models and also for the consumer. Now, another issue, of course, is where NIO currently is standing is that they need to logistically get the cars from China to Europe. And we've seen those shiploads of boats, the boats going to Europe. And so we can imagine there are possibly thousands of cars actually in Europe by now, which NIO has imported so far. And now the question is, like, is this a sustainable model, and how can this really work in a ramp phase to get lots of sales up and going? Something that, for example, Tesla has struggled with for quite some time. Another thing is that NIO is, although we know it as first adopters and shareholders, NIO is a new brand, and it's a Chinese brand, and it's a premium to luxury brand. So lots of news and unknowns, and we don't really know actually how will be the customer acceptance, or NIO doesn't know it either, right? And so, yeah, this is kind of the unique situation that NIO is currently facing. And so I think with this bit of context, that's how they thought about their pricing strategy and the go-to-market strategy. And that's how they really came up with this subscription idea on top of everything else. Now, of course, NIO also has this very, very different and unique understanding of themselves in terms of where they are positioned as a company, and also how they see the user, and also, NIO as a company just beyond the car, actually, more as a mobility provider, as an enabler, but also as a curator of a lifestyle service. So this is where they starting to build up an ecosystem rather than focusing on only selling the product. And so maybe let me quote Fight Club here with a very important issue, which is the things that we own end up owning you, right? So ownership actually creates problems, not only on a sustainability level, but also on an economic level, on the way of responsibility. In German we say Eigentum verpflichtet. So if you're owning something, then you really need to take care about it, and you are legally obliged to do so. And so that's the whole situation where NIO coming from, actually also if you think about where Liebin is coming from an e-commerce perspective, an e-commerce internet platform owner and founder, and also that he's been pretty much framed by something called a sharing economy, and basically paving the way for bringing the sharing economy to the battery world in terms of battery as a service, right? So it is kind of a logical, strategical step if you think that through, if you have this self-understanding that NIO has, to think about ways of getting rid of ownership. And what I think people are kind of really noticing right now is that there is something called a total cost of ownership, TCO, if you are owning a vehicle. So it's not only the purchase price, it's also the cost for insurance, it's the cost for maintaining, it's the cost for the running cost, everything you need to put into consideration, where actually EVs are getting more and more interesting because of the fact that, of course, oil might get more and more expensive in the future, despite maybe, well, not during a recession though, but there will be peak in oil production, and also hopefully at some point in time renewables become more and more economic, although of course we are also living in an energy crisis, and that might be also another more aspect to consider, that we're going through turbulent economic times, and so this is another context where I don't agree there will be issues in Europe, to be honest. I'm quite a bit pessimistic on the European side, or Germany in particular, in terms of how well we will be doing as an economy. However, I do think there's also lots of money in Germany, and I don't get the fear around all of the issues around the energy crisis. Yes, we are in a very stupid situation right now, I would say. However, things may work out in the long run. So I don't want to add fuel literally to those fear mongers who are talking about this all of the time, but certainly that's also some risk and fluctuation that you definitely would want to consider. And so what NIO is giving us there is actually a one tech price, and that one wasn't really well communicated in my view during the event, and I think that's steering there's quite a bit of uproar, that people don't understand it. They don't see to know where are the advantages from a user perspective. And I think it's also a miss between expectations and reality. So lots of people possibly watched the event or came to the event with the expectation that they will open the NIO app and actually be able to buy one of those cars. But there was no such trigger for it. Instead, of course, all you can do is to start with a subscription. I'm not NIO Communications, and I cannot pitch on their behalf what are the advantages. So I think they should go out and improve their communications there and tell us how is it better. Give us the points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and say why is this clearly better, and compare it for example, to others and give us the benefits, for example. But maybe let's just rationalize it and look over some stuff that I'm currently seeing out there, which is one of the advantages is people can just start testing the car right away, just for 1 month. Check it out. Do I really like a new Chinese car? Is it as good as it looks in those videos? Is it as reliable? What do I do if I bought this car and there is a technical issue? Is this new startup actually some entity that I can trust, that I can rely on? Will they really satisfy me? And do I not maybe end up with a lemon or a car that I can't use anymore and then put a lot of money on there? So instead, I could just try it out if I'm serious about, if I love this car, if I really am curious about it, just try it out for 1 month and then keep going, or change maybe to a different model, or even cancel it. And so that's actually my whole point. I think NIO made a very clear business decision there, a very strategic decision there. And so possibly we're more addressing people that are currently already leasing and are maybe rather rich, affluent business owners that are very used to this model. And in fact, let's look at some facts. I mean, 60%, sometimes up to 80% of the competitors like Audi, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and so on are leased today in the German market. And so this is not a new model that you don't actually own the car. Of course, with leasing, you have the optionality after your leasing ends that you either switch to another model, or that you are actually putting down the rest of the money and actually own the car. However, here's also the issue. Ownership also includes a risk. You actually own the car, so you own all the responsibility, and you have the so-called Restwertrisiko. So that means the risk of you still have to sell the car at some point in time. And in case that you are not able to sell it at the price that you want to, because, for example, there's no buyer for it, or the price has declined a lot, then it's at your expenses. So if you're leasing the car and you don't own it, or if you have this kind of subscription, then you actually basically don't have to care about this at all. So the feedback that I saw sometimes is that, this offering seems rather pricey. There's around 999 for the ET5, right, up to 1,300 euros if I remember it correctly, for the ET7, and then also there's only was it around 1,500 kilometers included. However, let's compare it. So either you have actually the money already, let's say 69,000 euros for the ET7. So that's actually the gross listing price with the BAFA, so the official German authorities. And actually, if you have that, then congratulations to you. You're possibly a very wealthy person. And if you haven't, then you actually need to finance it. So let's imagine you put down, let's say, 20K of your own money, and you have to finance 49K. So that brings you to a financing obligations for, let's say, 5 years, 49,000 euros, 830 euros monthly. So that's actually already quite close to the actual price, and that's only including owning the car and the financing, and you're actually paying here, at least right now, still less than 1% on effective interest per year. So that's actually a quite good deal. If you would have to finance the full price of it, the quick math gives me already 2% interest rates. And this also brings us to a monthly rate of 1,200 for the same ownership, and still not having included like the insurance, the kilometers, the maintenance, the service packages, and everything else. So it's very quickly getting to a similar level there, while having actually more to worry about the actual ownership of the car, I would say. And so this tells me maybe that people who are now reacting to this like that are actually not the people who are actually able to afford such kind of a car, maybe, because if they would have the money to pay it down, I would say then they would be right now business owners who would actually have a different mental model, because actually if you own a business, it's also preferential to actually lease the car. And the reason is you use your business and you can just deduct the leasing rates from your taxes, because it's creating cost, and therefore it's lowering your tax liabilities. And that's the usual thing to do, honestly. And also, if you compare it to similar offerings there, like a leasing for the Mercedes EQS, where I think the ET7 is totally competing with, it's actually also around 1,200 to 1,300 leasing per month, not including any services, not the tires, not the maintenance and stuff like that, purely giving you the car as a leasing. And you also don't own the car after the leasing ends. You either have to buy it for the rest of it, and then you either once again need the financing, or you have the money from somewhere mysteriously. So you see, I don't know, like also if we look for some leasing prices for the Tesla Model 3 in Germany, it's quickly around 850 euros, the Model Y around 1,000 euros. So, you know, I haven't done a very big benchmarking there yet, and honestly, I'm also lacking all of the details that NIO should offer in terms of what their package also includes, how the cost is going to decline over time. But you know, just to give you a sense of actual cost of ownership, cost of financing, options that you have out there, how competition is doing that, it doesn't seem to be priced out of this world in my point of view. Now, I said I think NIO made this because of a very strategic business decision, and a couple of things are coming into play here. So first of all, there are subsidies in Germany as well. There need to be certain thresholds that have to be met in terms of the price of the car, and then they get a couple of €1,000 for supporting electric vehicles. I don't have to go into the full details, but it seems like with this model currently, NIO will be selling the cars to another entity, maybe the leasing partner, or maybe some entity that NIO is setting up, maybe similar actually a little bit to this battery asset management company where NIO is selling the batteries to. And so basically NIO is essentially in the very beginning already receiving the revenues from these leasing partners for the car, and they don't have to worry about booking those revenues over time. And instead what they can do is they can collect those subsidies in Germany, which are limited by time, so they will go lower over time. And so I think this is a strategic aspect here. The timing of this offering and going into the market right now is very crucial. I've heard, speaking to industry experts also yesterday or during the event, that right now those leasing companies have really trouble of getting latest models and fulfilling the needs of their customers. So they need somebody who can provide cars that they can lease out. And so because of the chip shortages and the supply chain issues and all that's going on, that's a unique 12 to 24 months time frame where it's very beneficial actually for somebody like NIO to be able to already supply cars to them first, and then they keep this business up and going. And then also, I'm also always outpointing how NIO's business model is already different from, let's say, a Tesla or any other OEM, where NIO is not so much focused on the actual sales of the cars, but rather of increasing the touch points with the user over time, and then for each of those touch points I'm creating a margin and also an economic benefit, and rather keeping the retention rate high. So that's perfectly reflected also in such kind of a subscription model, because of course you want to keep those reoccurring transactions with the user there. So it might be possible that additionally to those subsidies, the BAFA subsidies that NIO can book, the EV subsidies, even for the leasing, again for the customer, they can also enjoy those preferential terms once again. So and even for each of the leasings, I'm not sure if this also applies to a subscription model, because subscription is kind of different than a leasing still, but I know those terms exist for leasing. So that might be also another point which they have considered. And there might be an issue around of course, usually if you're the customer, then you would also get this kind of subsidy if you would buy the car. So basically you're missing out on the subsidy. But in a way, NIO is forwarding, I would say, the subsidy by having those rates that include a lot already, and lowering those prices to a level that ultimately they wouldn't do if they wouldn't get those EV subsidies, I would say. Now, what I can imagine what they could do on top of that is that I think Chinese banks might be involved somehow in here. and actually providing the funding for those leasing companies in order to buy the cars from NIO. And that means that over time, in case we see interest rates going up in the West, as the Federal Reserve and the central banks all over the world are tightening their policies, and China, on the other hand, is easing, there might be the overlap at which point it's actually getting cheaper to use Chinese funding, bank loans and credits that are preferable and have lower interest rates that could be used in order to leverage or finance these deals with the leasing companies. And that's something NIO surely has considered, which they can do then in this regard, which they possibly couldn't do in a B2C relation. Okay, there are even more strategic benefits for NIO in this, so let me continue. First of all, I think NIO is also looking at the second-hand car market. And while this one is declining currently, so bringing actually down inflation, the fact is for highly sought after models like NIO and Tesla, prices are actually quite stable or even going up in some regards. And of course, this would be something that's also beneficial for an EV owner. Like if you're a Tesla owner, you have possibly really good chances of selling it at a good price. However, NIO is, I think, also looking at this model. And so what they can do is they can now very quickly enter this market, bringing every monthly transaction, every short-term rental here is creating a new touch point with a new user, is creating a new used car, which later on they could opt off, for example, even selling, but at least bringing into the service network and ecosystem again at different terms. And so NIO has ways of generating additional profits from this. And similarly, they can actually also, with this included price for all of the service packages, because they are currently up in the unknown, like how much will the operations really cost in Germany, later on possibly optimize cost in many regards and thereby increasing their margins when making those kind of subscription plans available. Because of course the plan is staying the same amount, but if the cost is declining for the underlying services, then that goes directly into the pockets of NIO. And then of course, this is something which is more preferential to shareholders rather than actually the NIO owners. But in the end, if the superior experience by NIO is actually on point, I think users possibly wouldn't mind that. And I think that's also one of the bet that NIO is taking. First of all, it seems like they are convinced that their product is really good and sought after. And second of all, they want people to really experience their services and not only the car. So they want people, and that might be a new phenomena in Europe, to experience the whole ecosystem. And how do you experience that? Well, if you are including those service packages, if you are making that a monthly subscription, that's rather dragging people into the whole ecosystem than actually if NIO were just to sell the car and then the relationship kind of ends. And this is where NIO is in control. They can really fine-tune this consumer interaction, the user experience, and exactly the reason why companies like Audi, Porsche, and so on try to break into such kind of services, because actually they have an issue, which is the dealership. Usually they are just selling to dealers, and which has been a very good model historically, because of course they also get the profits immediately and then don't have to care about the customer relation and so on. However, it's becoming a pain point for them, and increasingly going forward they actually want to have more operational control also over the customer experience, and they are tied to those dealership contracts currently still in place. And that is something that Tesla and NIO from the very beginning have made differently. They're not relying on such dealerships. They have their own sales network, and so this enables such kind of new experiences that they can create. And now with the subscription model, NIO is kind of really bringing this to the next level in a way, if you will. The question is, like, will they be more successful for this? There might be also not the user adoption for it similarly, maybe because of values, because of the ownership culture in Germany. But as I've pointed out, some of the facts are actually speaking against it, as so many people are actually currently already not owning their car and not thinking of doing so. And as I've pointed out, it's actually oftentimes not really the preferential thing to do so. And so for NIO, this has also the benefit that with this very unique group which understands this in the very beginning, they can test the market, the price elasticity, they can check whether or not people are willing to pay for it. And if it's going wrong, if there's not enough demand for such kind of a subscription, they can still offer it as selling it directly to consumer. There is no issue with that. However, for now, they really don't have to put an actual price tag on the cars, which is also a good thing going forward, because imagine if they would now price it very aggressively in the market, let's say even below a Tesla model, just to win market share. The question is, could they supply as many cars as there is demand for it? Second of all, what happens if they want to raise the prices later on, or because they have to? That would be a difficult thing to do, right? And second of all, maybe if they price it too high in the very beginning, they could make also a mistake pricing themselves out of the market. And then it's very negative also for the car perception and the brand perception if they later on need to lower the prices. So with this flexibility option in the very beginning, just test it for a month. Let's see how many people are up for that, and later on still open to ownership models or different models of payment, or actually introducing a hard facts price for the car there. And so this is giving NIO essentially time to build up the market with a tiny, more dense test group in the very beginning, which doesn't mind the subscription model, until, for example, infrastructure is built out better, until they have more experiences with their users, until possibly, and that is also, I think, something to consider, maybe they're thinking of localizing production in Germany, getting rid of the issue about import taxation. So what happens if NIO next year announces a factory in Germany? Then they could actually introduce the car once it's built locally in Germany with an actual price that doesn't have the issue of paying the import taxes, and then they can price it much more ambitiously right from the beginning and are better at fulfilling the demand. If they do it now, it's just creating trouble going down further into the timelines. I think, once again, this is the big picture which they are watching from the management point of view, and I'm trying to give you all of those reasons why I think from a business perspective, from even a shareholder perspective, this has lots of benefits and making lots of sense. However, of course, the communication has been terrible. In my point of view, it's creating some of buzz. Well, you might say, even if it's negative buzz, maybe it's even creating some awareness. But we'll find out, we'll see the numbers. Are these people complaining currently in the app or everywhere else? Are these just a very powerful minority who's pretty loud, or are they actually the ones who would be the only customers for NIO, and it's only possible to actually sell a NIO car and it's not possible to lease it or to subscribe to it? Personally, if I just look at the bare facts, very rational. I think it's a transparent model that implies all of the total cost of ownership. It's certainly trying to do a big step here. It's you already see that people cannot wrap their heads around it. It's a new concept, and it's making it even more difficult as a Chinese brand, maybe. But maybe that's just a perception thing, and will actually be proven wrong in reality. We'll see and find out about this. But this is just my personal opinion after thinking through, watching all of the comments, doing a little bit of research. Let me know your personal opinion instead down in the comments. And well, do you think that this is an issue going forward for NIO or not? Or are you excited about the prospects of it and the benefits that I've just pointed out, also from a business perspective? And do you think that NIO can once again do what they have done before with battery swapping, using an existing idea that someone else tried and failed, and then they do it better? Maybe they're just better at such types of operations. We'll see. Maybe they fail just as others have in this area. I just know we're going to find out, and that's my take for now. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.